This is a course for web designers, so it might sound like stating the obvious to say that you need to know HTML. What I mean by that is that you have no fear of looking at HTML code, and that when you do so, you know what the different elements are for. A solid understanding of HTML is necessary because a lot of the PHP code used in this course is embedded directly in the HTML. If you don't know your way around the HTML structure, you're likely to make a lot of frustrating mistakes. If you need to get up to speed with HTML, take a look at the HTML Essential Training with Bill Weinman on lynda.com before coming back to this course. You don't need to have used PHP before. I explain everything you need to know to understand the code. I don't assume that you're already familiar with programming jargon, but once I've explained a concept, I'll use the appropriate technical expression thereafter. If you've been using JavaScript or jQuery, you'll find a lot of the concepts are very similar, but they're not always the same. I'll point out similarities and differences where appropriate, but knowledge of JavaScript isn't essential. PHP is a server-side language, so you'll need a suitable testing environment. It needs to run PHP 5.2 or later. For Chapter 6, you'll also need a MySQL database. The minimum version should be 5.0. And to load some data into MySQL from a text file, I recommend using a front-end tool such as PHP The best way is to install a local testing environment on your computer. There are several all-in-one packages that install PHP, MySQL, and PHP On Windows, my preference is to use XAMPP. On my Mac, I use MAMP. Both are free. If you don't want to install a local testing environment, you can use an existing website, as long as it has PHP and MySQL installed. However, it's not as convenient because you need to upload your files every time you make a change. If you need help with installing a local testing environment, check out Installing Apache, PHP and MySQL with David Gassner on lynda.com. Whichever testing environment you choose, I recommend that it should be configured to display error messages and that error reporting should be set to the highest level. If you're using MAMP on a Mac, the display of errors is turned off by default. Be sure to watch the separate video in this course to show how to turn them on. When it comes to writing PHP code, whichever program you're currently using to write HTML pages should be sufficient. However, you'll find it easier if your editor has the following features: code coloring for PHP, automatic syntax checking that alerts you to mistakes in your code, PHP code hints and auto-completion, and the ability to find matching opening and closing braces, parentheses, and brackets. In this course, I'll be using Dreamweaver CS6, which has all of these features, but this course doesn't rely on features exclusive to Dreamweaver, so feel free to use whichever program you feel most comfortable with. If your editing program doesn't have the features I've recommended, Joseph Lowry's course on choosing a PHP editor has several alternative suggestions. There's just one final thing that you need: patience. Unlike HTML, programming languages like PHP don't tolerate mistakes. As a beginner, you're likely to make quite a few. I'll try to warn you of common errors, and there's a special chapter devoted to dealing with error messages. Don't let errors put you off. PHP isn't difficult, and you'll find the rewards of persevering really pay off in the end. If you're a member of lynda.com, you'll have access to the exercise files I'll be using in this course. I have them here on my desktop in a folder called Exercise Files. There are 4 other folders inside the Exercises Files folder: Exercises, H&P_check, H&P_final, and Hansel and Petal. You can't open PHP files directly in a browser because they need to be processed by a web server. So you need to copy these folders to the root folder of your testing server. The location of the server root depends on your setup. I'm using XAMPP on Windows, so I'm going to copy these 4 folders to my htdocs folder. So let's copy those, and then go to the XAMPP folder and htdocs, which is my server root, and paste them. Once you've pasted the folders, as long as the server is running, the server root in a local testing environment can be accessed by typing localhost in a browser address bar. follow that by a slash, and then the name of the folder, then another slash, and the name of the file. So I'm going to open my browser and type localhost /exercises/index.php and then press enter or return, and that displays an index to all the exercise files that are used in the course. Let's just take a look at the exercises folder and its structure itself. There's a separate folder for each chapter, and if we open the chapter itself, they're numbered according to the numbers of the video. And if we open one of those folders, you'll see that there is a file, and then there's another file with _final. This first file is what the page will look like at the beginning of the exercise, and this is what it will look like at the end of the exercise. If you type your own code in the start file, a quick way to launch it in a browser is to open this index and then click the Start File link. And then the second link shows you what it would look like at the end of the exercise. The exercise files are deliberately simple, and they're designed to demonstrate a particular technique in isolation, allowing you to concentrate on the code without being distracted by complex web pages. But doing a series of exercises in isolation isn't enough in itself. So I show you how to implement those techniques in a real website. That's what the 3 other top-level folders are for. So let's go back and look at those folders. The Hansel and Petal folder contains a website for a fictitious floral design company, Hansel and Petal, that's been created entirely in static HTML. It's not a complete site, but it contains a sufficient number of pages to feel realistic. Use this as your work folder for the practical exercises. So let's just take a quick look at that Hansel and Petal site. Instead of exercises, we type Hansel and Petal. So there is the site that we will be working with. And at the end of the course, HNP_final shows the way that the site will look when we've finished everything. This final version of the site is PHP enhanced, and it uses server-side includes, it processes a form, displays the results with conditional statements, and it also draws content from a database. To help you keep track with the progress through adapting the Hansel and Petal site, the HNP_check folder contains numbered folders representing what the site looks like at the end of each video. Let's take a quick look at that. If you need a fresh copy of files to follow a particular video, copy the files from the previous numbered folder and replace your working copy in the Hansel and Petal folder. For example, if you want the files for the start of Chapter 4 Video 3, which is here, copy the files from 03_06 and copy them into the Hansel and Petal folder. If you copy a set of files from the HNP_check folder, you need to make a change to one line of code in the includes folder to ensure that links inside the site work correctly. So let me just show you what you need to do. It's this includes folder, and then you need to open this particular file, pagetop.php. Let's just open it. And on line 4, you need to change this line. Change this from HNP_check and the number simply to Hansel and Petal. And if you make that change, all the links will work correctly within your working site. So, now you know how the files are organized, let's get to work. When developing with PHP, it's essential to display error messages. Unfortunately, by default, MAMP on a Mac turns off the display of errors. You can check this in the start screen of MAMP by clicking PHP info and then searching with Command F for display_errors. And there it is, display errors is turned off. The simple way to fix this is to use a configuration file for the Apache web server called .htaccess, and there's a copy of the file in the exercises files folder. So let's go to the exercises files, and in the Mac only folder, htaccess is there. The problem is you can't see it by default in the Mac Finder, because the Mac Finder hides files normally that begin with a dot or a period. There's also a file in there called config.php, and that is there to help you read the configuration once it has been changed. So what we need to do is to use a text editor, and a very good text editor is called Text Wrangler that you can obtain free of charge from barebones.com. If we go to Applications and then scroll down to Text Wrangler, double click to open that, and then in File, Open, and we need to select Show Hidden Items. And in Exercise Files, if you open Mac only, there is .htaccess, which is now being displayed. So if you open .htaccess, that contains the configuration command that is needed to turn on the display of errors on Apache. So we just need to save that. File, Save As, and then we need to go to the Applications folder and to MAMP and the htdocs folder, and you save this in the htdocs folder, but needs to be saved as .htaccess. When you click Save, you get this message saying that names that begin with a dot are reserved to the system. It's fine, just click Use Dot and it will be saved. Now the other thing that you need to do is to open the config file. That was in our desktop, in the exercise files in the Mac only folder, config.php. Open that and then save that in the same place. So Save As, and then we go to the Applications folder and MAMP, htdocs, and just save it there. So if we go to a browser, if you reload this page, it will still show off. But if you change this to localhost :8888/config.php, you'll see the configuration details of the server as they have been changed. So let's just search for display errors again. And display errors is now marked as being on as the local value, and the master value, which is what MAMP is using, is off. But this means that errors will be displayed correctly in your web pages. And it's very important to have the display of errors turned on while you're developing with PHP.